Fluffy. She left. I don't get it. Here, grab this one.
What?
Give this to her. Oh, we're live. Okay. Fluffy's in the studio with us today. I don't know if she'll walk in and out, but she's around. Right now she's cuddled up with my son in the background. So you may see Fluffy walking around and distracting. Otherwise, we are going to go on with class today. It is yoga for anxiety today. So we're going to work on working with negative and positive. Not so much negative and positive, but what we judge as negative and positive. So that separation, that severing of ourselves that we often do, judging one side as good and one side as bad, rather than just thinking about ourselves as ourselves. So I invite you throughout the practice to kind of notice what is coming up. And whenever you're judging yourself as good or bad, or the thoughts that are coming in as good or bad, or labeling good or bad, just notice. So we're going to start to think about whether the excess energy and anxiety is the constant pressure of trying to judge yourself. So judge our thoughts, judge our feelings, judge our physical body. So we do it all. We judge our physical body as it can move in a certain way or cannot move in a certain way. We judge our thoughts as whether they should or should not, or whether they're good or bad. We judge our feelings as good or bad. So we're going to try and work on just being with those feelings, thoughts, and physical limitations or abilities, whatever we have. So I didn't grab my own blocks today, but if you have blocks, grab them. If you don't, you can just use your muscular engagement the same as if you have a block. So we're going to go down to our back. Start on our back. Bring your knees in. Give yourself a little hug. Land on the ground. And one of the things that yoga invites us to do is to become a student of ourselves. To have that self-inquiry. So bring your feet down to the ground, your knees up. Maybe let your knees come in together. Try and get the low back and the hips nice and soft. Take a check-in in the neck. Make sure you're not holding any tension in the neck. Land on the ground. And then I invite you to bring your hands like you're giving yourself a hug, a little bit of a protective shape across the torso. So many people do this, especially if we're feeling stressed or anxious, maybe we're having an argument, we'll protect ourselves. We'll bring this feeling of protection in. So bring this feeling of protection in. Feel this shape. And get to know what is going on right now in this physical body. Notice how you feel emotionally. Notice how you feel energetically. Are you tired? Are you feeling a little pumped up, a little overly energetic? Are you feeling a little lethargic? And as you start to notice these things, notice, do you have a preference for one or the other? Not that one or the other is wrong or right. Not that having a preference for one or the other is wrong or right. Just notice. Notice any emotions that are whirling around. Notice that you can have both what we consider positive emotions and negative emotions at the same time. For example, we could have experienced a wonderful morning where we woke up to the smile of someone we love or the kiss from a puppy, and that made us feel very good, but the state of the world right now is also making us feel very anxious or stressed or worried or nervous. And we can have presence of both of these emotions. And try and let go of the concept of the love for the puppy being the only emotion that we're allowed to have because it's good, and the worry about the world not being allowed to be there. The worry of the world is a natural state. Everything is a little stressful right now around in our environment. It's a filter for information of what is going on. Allow it to be present, as if you're giving that feeling, that state, a little bit of a hug right now. Sitting with it, being present. And as you're doing this, notice your breath. Notice any tension forming in the physical body and start to try and soften it. Unclench the jaw, soften the face. Notice also if it's hard for the mind to allow you to be still on the mat, feeling your feelings. The practice of yoga is not only about the physical shapes and poses. It's about getting to know the physical, energetic, emotional, and mental layers of the body. And then getting to know the bliss layer, the deeper innermost layer, underneath all the other layers. And finding ways for all these layers to be in union with each other, not fighting against each other for most attention. So notice what the thoughts are doing and just notice. Try not to label as good or as bad. If you should have some thoughts and should not have others. And when the mind really trails you away from noticing the torso and the emotional state, take a check-in of any gripping around the jaw, around the chest, around the hips. Notice how the physical body responds when the mind draws all the attention to itself. And then very slowly allow the hands to soften off the torso and land palms up on the ground. Notice how this feels. The feeling of protection, and now the feeling of being a little open, a little more vulnerable. Notice which draws your attention the most. Maybe it's the physical sensation. Maybe it's the thoughts again. Maybe it's emotions. Just notice. Again, no labels, no good versus bad. Just noticing and getting to experience yourself as you are. And then bringing your knees in towards the chest. Give yourself a little hug. Maybe rock it side to side if that feels good for you. And then take the feet up to the ceiling. Wiggle your feet. Just experience your feet above your heart. Starting to move and connect with the physical body. Spread the toes, move the feet around, pedal out the legs, maybe starting to connect with the muscles in the back of the legs. Starting to have your own experience. So another thing that we do, even in a yoga class, is we label our physical body as good versus bad. We say we should be able to stretch the leg in this way, and if we can't, that's bad. We need to move towards the good position of our legs. We need to have the exact shape of triangle or the exact splits, or we should be able to lift our leg a certain length. Notice these thoughts and judgments throughout practice today. Just notice. It's all designed to help teach us about ourselves. So then we'll start to move with the breath. Push the hips down a little bit down to the ground, activating the core. Push the rib cage down to the ground. Soften the shoulders. And we're going to move and breathe with our breath, designed to generate heat in the core. So fire up the core, not the back. We're going to inhale as we lower the right leg. Exhale as we bring it back up. Inhale as we lower the left. Exhale as we bring it back up. Trying to keep this all in the core. Notice if your back starts to do all the work, maybe not move the foot so close to the ground. If you feel like it should be hovering right above the ground and you should be at maximum strength of your core, notice that. Check in. Don't just move your limbs in space. Find your breath. If you feel the heat is moving from your core up into your head, stop. Bring your knees in. Give yourself a hug. Take a break. Notice. Complete a full round and bring the knees in. Give yourself a little hug. Reset. Land your feet on the ground about hip width apart. And we're going to start to move and breathe, lifting the hips, but still activating the core. So breathing as we lift. Inhale, lift the hips. Exhale, lower. Start to connect with all of the muscles of the core as well as the back line. So now we're starting to feel the backs of our legs, the glutes. Try not to tuck the chin down to the chest and take all of the stress into the neck. Try to keep it in the core and then the glutes and legs. Again, moving with our breath. Maybe starting to slow the exhale down. Inhale. Exhale, slow. Notice if there's a natural little pause at the end of the exhale. Maybe experiment with lengthening that little pause. Notice if there is a pause at the end of the inhale and experiment with taking that away. So inhale, lift, exhale immediately without a little pause. And then maybe add the pause at the end of the exhale. Inhale, lift, exhale, maybe pause. Lower the hips nice and slow. And we're going to move the arms. Again with our breath. So bring the hands down by the hips. And we're going to inhale as we raise our arms slowly up over our head. Everything else soft. Exhale as we slowly push the air back out. Invitation to add a gentle pause. Inhale, lift. Exhale. Slowly push the breath out of the body. Gentle pause. Look for your compensation patterns. Try not to bring any stress and tension into the neck. Try to soften the face. Experiencing the arms and shoulders, just moving with the breath. Allow your hands and shoulders to land back on the ground. And take a quick check-in. Notice how you're feeling from when we started. Maybe you still feel the same. Notice there are no right or wrong answers. Just check in. And then, invitation to put the block in between the knees, just underneath the kneecap. Squeeze the block. So now we're squeezing the legs together. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Notice if you want to keep your feet hip width, or maybe you want to bring your feet towards each other. Just check in, see which one feels better for you. We're going to push the hips tightly into the ground and squeeze the block. We're going to bring the backs of our arms to the ground just to keep us stable, not too much tension in the shoulders. Really fire up the core. So you can push your hips into the ground. You squeeze the block, squeeze every muscle you can find in the stomach. And then we're going to take the knees left and right. Slow, controlled, left and right. Trying to use the muscles of the core. Squeeze the block. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Take the tension out of the face. Squeeze. Fire up the core. Let that go. Switch the size of the block. So take the long size between the legs and then the same movement. Push the hips into the ground, fire up the core, arms for support, and then knees side to side, nice and slow. Try to really fire up the core muscles all the way down to the tailbone. Squeeze the block. Try to keep the tension out of the face, nice and slow, soft in the face, soft in the neck. Release the block, return it to narrow width. Squeeze, little squeeze this time. So just a tiny squeeze, a little push of the feet into the ground, fire up the legs and the base, and then let the head just roll on the ground. See if you can release some tension in the neck. And then release your block. Take your legs back up to the ceiling. See how your legs feel. Move your legs, feel your legs, internal experience. Notice what is going on. Bring the knees in. Give yourself a little hug. And then roll on over to a side, straight into tabletop position. Inhale in a tabletop. Exhale, sending the hips back. Inhale, tabletop. Exhale, back. Notice your judgments. Notice what you're doing in your body. Are you worrying about where your hand is in relation to your shoulder? Are you worrying about the shape that you're making? Are you judging your physical body if it's giving you messages? Maybe your wrists are saying, hey, I'm tired today. Are you judging that as good or bad? Notice, notice, notice. Inhale forward. Exhale back. Again, invitation to start to add that little pause at the end of the exhale. What can you let go of? And then take the hips all the way over towards the right heel. Funky Child's. Come forward and take the hips all the way over to the left heel. Funky Child's. And come forward, a little bend in the elbows. Just set up so your knees and hips are comfortable. Little bend in the elbows. And we're going to take the weight left and right. So just moving left and right, trying to feel your arms and shoulders. And your wrists. Notice any gripping in the fingers. Maybe moving through the fingers too. Lifting the wrists, feeling the fingers. Again, internal experience. Not worrying about what I'm doing or what you think you should be doing, but worrying about what is going on in your body. Noticing. How do your fingers feel? How do your wrists feel? How do your shoulders feel today? Sink it back to child. How does your back feel? How do your knees feel? How do your hips feel? Come on forward all the way down to crocodile. One hand on top of the other, forehead down. Shimmy the hips. And what can you let go of? We're going to move and breathe here. Just beginning to think about lengthening the spine and finding all of the muscles on the back line. Your hands can be wherever your shoulders feel comfortable. We're going to inhale as we lift the shoulders and exhale as we lower. Trying to find all of the muscles in the back, all the way down to the heels. But we're not overly straining the neck. We're thinking about lifting the shoulders rather than the neck. The head just comes along for the ride. We're not trying to pull the head up and back. Try to use the muscles and find the muscles evenly. And again, notice what you're doing inside your physical body, inside your head. Maybe begin to lift the hands and the feet. But notice, are you pulling yourself up because of someone else's ideal? Or are you listening to your body and noticing what your body needs to grow stronger and longer? And to release the tension held in your own unique way. Bring it back down to crocodile. Shimmy the hips and let go. Option to repeat the same thing, or if you would like, try bringing a block between your shins. So you're going to bring a block between your lower legs. You're going to squeeze the block. So engage the block first. Fire up the whole back line. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Bring it back down to crocodile. Release the block if you were using it. Shimmy the hips and let go. Find your breath. Notice what it is doing. And then send the hips back to child's pose. Find a little space in the low back in child's pose. And then up to down dog. Warming up your down dog in whatever way feels good in your own body. So move your legs. Move your hips. Move your arms and shoulders in whatever way, shape, movement feels good. or feels like it's the movement you enjoy in this moment or need in this moment. Not the shape that you think you should be making. And then find the stillness of down dog. We're going to move and breathe in our down dog, adding that little gentle pause. If this is too much for you today, bring your knees down and go back to inhaling tabletop, exhaling child's. If you want to pump it up, we're going to inhale forward, high plank shape. Exhale back, up, down dog, and at the pause. Inhale forward, exhale down dog without moving hands and feet. Really making this inside the core. Finding those core muscles and making the movement as if it came from the core. So pull your hips forward and pull your hips backwards. Find a down dog. Release the tension from the neck. Find your breath. Bend both the knees and look towards the hands. And take a little hop or walk all the way up so your feet are underneath your hips. Forward fold, bring your torso to your thighs and let go of the tension in your neck. Breathe. Turn your world upside down. Take a deep inhale, arms up overhead. Exhale, prayer to heart. Connect with our breath. Inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, prayer to heart. Feel free to add your gentle pause. Inhale up. Exhale, prayer to heart. Hold. Invitation to soften your eyes closed. We're going to move through our feet. So you can soften your eyes closed for this or keep them open if it's more comfortable. We're going to lift the toes. Lift up the toes, spread the toes wide. So, as you're doing this, your hands are a prayer, you're lifting your toes. Check what happened when you lifted your toes. Did you bring tension into the low back, into the legs, the ankles? Notice, notice, notice. See if you can just lift the toes by using the muscles of the feet and still keep the legs soft. Maybe you need to bend your knees a little to take the tension out of the back and the legs. Legs soft, feet lifted, toes lifted. And then place the toes down and rock onto the balls of your feet. You don't need to lift the heels, but you just put the weight onto the balls of the feet. If you want, you can lift the heels and challenge your balance. Notice what you do with your toes. So as we rock the weight forward onto the balls of our feet, we grip with the toes. See if you can undo the gripping of the toes. Little soft action of muscles in the legs, not gripping. Not gripping in the back, not gripping in the stomach, not gripping in the shoulders. Rock the weight back onto the heels. Maybe lift the toes again. Maybe you can even lift the balls of the feet slightly. Notice what happens when you make these actions. Lower the toes, put the weight back, mountain pose, regular mountain pose. Find softness in the back, the hips, the glutes. Softness in the toes, the face, the shoulders. Find your center, find your breath. And then rock the weight over to the right side of both feet. Notice what happens internally when you do this. Notice any gripping in the toes. And then rock the weight over to the left side of both feet. And just notice what happens, what changes. Back to neutral. Give a shimmy of the hips, maybe let any tension in the back go. And if you have the eyes closed, softly float them open. Connecting with our breath again, this time a little bit more full body. Inhale, lift the arms up with the heels. Exhale, lower the heels, lower the hips, baby chair. Inhale, lift, lengthen, don't lock the knees. Exhale, lower, nice and slow. Connect with the breath. Sink it down to a baby chair. Hold, find. So can you hold your chair without gripping at the toes? Without gripping around the hips, so our legs are active, but not overly active. Our glutes are active, but not the only player. Stomach is active, shoulders are soft, face is soft. And then we're gonna roll the weight slowly over to the right side of the feet. Slow, slow, slow. Find which muscles activate and change, and then roll the weight slowly over to the left side of the feet. So slow, slow. Slowly right. Slowly left. And then just start to take it a little more free. Noticing weight changes. Trying to be entirely in the legs and the body and the feelings of the muscles. Bring it back to a baby chair. Bring the hips up, mountain pose. Take the feet a little bit wider. Heels in, toes out. Maybe about that mat width apart. And we're going to slowly sink the hips down. So notice how this is not goddess, not quite goddess. But we're going to sink our hips down and feel this shape. So notice what happens. Are we gripping around our knees? Are we gripping in the low back? Notice. Try to be even in your body. So the legs are active, but no one part is more active than the other. We're not gripping with our toes. Breathe and hold. And then take the weight a little bit over to the right side of the feet. Notice what happens. And a little bit over to the left side of the feet. Notice what happens, and then move left and right. Notice, feel, see if you can find all the muscles that make all these movements happen in our body that we move throughout the day without noticing. Finding that mind, body connection. Bring it back to center. And we're going to slowly lower the hips. Good time to grab a block if we have it. Find the block and let the hips move and warm up into squat pose, Malasana. So, option to place the block in underneath your hips. Can be somewhat kinder to the heels and ankles. We're going to move either way. So if you're holding Malasana up with your block in front of you, we're going to move left and right. So we're going to move, dropping the knee back to center, drop the other knee. So this is slow, controlled, feeling the muscles that make this movement happen. If you are on the block, same thing. Let one knee come towards center. Slow, other knee comes towards center. Slow change. Inhale, center. Exhale, knee towards the center. Inhale, both knees open. Exhale, knee towards the center. So have an internal experience. You're starting to find perhaps the muscles in the inner thigh as well as the muscles in the hip. Notice any gripping that happens in the feet. Bring it back to center. Hold your Malasana. So get your spine nice and long. Lift up out of the ground. Your legs active. So press the feet into the ground and then pull up from the ground with all of your leg muscles as much as you can. If you're going to hold, press your arms into your legs into your arms. So you have that two-way force activating both sides of the legs. Lengthen, breathe. Try not to grip. Find that activation with the muscles without forcing and forcing and forcing. Just activate, lengthen, breathe. And then slowly walk your feet back towards hip distance. Come up off your block if you're on it. Lower the hips. So we're going to have the feet hip width apart. We're going to land on the hips. And we're going to fire up the core first. So you're going to lean back just so you can feel the muscles of the stomach, not until you fall on the tailbone. Lift up, get long as if somebody's pulling a string, making you longer, longer, longer. Lean back. See if you can fire up the stomach muscles. Maybe even bring your fingertips here to this group of muscles to remind you which ones you're trying to use. Bring the toes, the big toes, to the tips of the toes, as if you're pointing with your toes, cramp. Fire up the core. Maybe lift your toes just a little. Maybe lift your hands. Lengthen, lengthen and breathe. Hold. Long, long, long in the core. Breathe. Lower the toes. Take a little reset. Maybe a little wiggle. Set up again. And this time option to take the block between the lower legs. So setting up, getting long, long, long in the spine first. Engage. Toes to the tips of the toes, and then maybe lift. Long in the spine. Activate the core. Breathe. Squeeze a block, or imagine you're squeezing a block. Lower the toes. Take a little reset. So take the feet wide, and then the same thing that we were just doing in the Malasana. So we're going to inhale, legs open. Exhale, roll a knee into center. Inhale, open. Exhale, roll a knee into center. Maybe this time starting to really feel the front of the hip as you move the leg into center. Lengthening, twisting, breathing, moving in whichever way your physical body feels it needs right now. Maybe you're going to start to lengthen an arm, reach long, inhale, center, exhale, lift. Now bring it back to center. Set up nice and long in the spine. Feet grounded but not gripping. So feet feel the ground, pushing into the ground and pulling up at the same time, getting longer, longer, longer in the spine. This time we're going to take a deep inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, twist to the right, then let the knees come over to the right. So now we're twisting and pulling with our core muscles. Breathe. Notice if we're yanking with this right arm. Try to twist with the core. Come back to center. Take a deep inhale, lift the arms overhead. Exhale, twist to the left, and then let the knees come over. Breathe into the twist in the torso area. And then all the way back to neutral. Cross the legs and come over. Tabletop position. Connecting with our breath again. Inhaling forward, exhaling, sending the hips back. Maybe this time changing the position of our hands. Just changing the muscle shape a little. Bring it back to tabletop. Lift up out of the ground. Send the right leg, even with the hip. Activate the entire right leg. So really lifting up out of the ground, not sinking into any joints. Lifting, lifting, lifting. Hold the right leg. Slowly bring the right leg towards the right wrist. And then back. Towards the right wrist. Try not to let too much of your base move. We're trying to keep this in the leg and the hip. If this is too much, bend the knee. Make the leg a little lighter. And then lower the toes and press through the heel. Find the back of the leg. Little pulses or hold static, whichever feels like the movement your body needs right now. Bring it back to tabletop. Left leg, even with the hip. Engage, engage, engage. Lift up out of the ground. Hold. Slowly bring the left heel towards the left hip. And then back to behind. Towards, left heel towards the left wrist. And then back to behind the hip. Again, bend the knee. If the leg feels too heavy, if this feels like it's too strenuous for the body. Notice if maybe one side you need to bend the knee and one side you don't. Our bodies are not this magical, neutral, even creation. We have to do exactly the same on the left and the right. Our muscles are very different. Our holding patterns, our scars, all different. And then lower the toes, find the back of the leg. And bring it back to a tabletop. Take the hands a little bit further away from you than they normally are. Engage in the hands. So we're trying to pull out of the wrists. Pull all the way out of the wrists. Engage the arms, the chest, the shoulders. We're going to lower the elbows down to the ground and then lift. Slowly activating the shoulders. Mindful of tension in the neck. Lower the forearms down and engage. Strongly engage the arms. So now we feel like we're pulling the arms apart. We're going to bring the nose forward, shoulders forward. Tuck the toes, engage the stomach, and maybe just hover the knees engaged in the arms, or maybe send the feet back until you're in a full plank. Forearm plank, hold, hover. Watch the tension in the face and the neck. Bend the knees and slowly walk the hips upward. So maybe take the tension right out of the neck. Bend in the knees. Lift up out of the ground with the shoulders engaged. And again, only take this to where your body feels like it's not sinking into any joints and buckling. It's strong and engaged. Maybe practice lifting one leg at a time up out of the ground, bending the knees, lift, lengthen, pull up out of the ground. Lift, lengthen, pull. Slowly lower the knees all the way down to the ground, hips back. Lower the forehead, flip the palms, and let the arms and shoulders soften. So not worrying about where the hips are, just allowing the shoulders and arms to soften. Release what they are holding. Slowly bring the torso up to a seat. And find a comfortable seat, whatever that is for you. No prizes for sitting crisscross. If that's not the seat for you, find a chair, find a cushion. Sit any way that your hips and spine can be comfortable. We're going to take our hands out. We're going to look at our hands, spread our fingers. We're going to make fists. We're going to look at our fists. We're going to flip our hands, pull our fingers down, look at our hands, pull them down, pull them in towards each other, and then out. Towards each other and out. As if you're trying to make all the movements your wrists can make. And as you're doing this, like I'm doing, notice any tension that you're pulling into your shoulders. So notice, notice, notice. Again, it's all about an internal experience. Soften the shoulder, soften the back. We're just thinking about letting our wrists find some movement. And then see if you can take a really slow circle, moving only the wrists and keeping the tension only in the hands. Not in the shoulders, not in the face, not in the back. Reverse your circle. And then we're going to flick it out. So flick your glitter, spray your glitter, loosen your arms and your shoulders. Really soften and shake the arms. Soften, soften, soften. Shake the arms. Maybe even the chest a little. Let it go. Let your arms land wherever the shoulders feel most comfortable. Take some movements in the shoulders. And then we're going to pull the shoulders all the way up to the ears and suddenly let them drop. Shoulders up, drop. Trying to let the tension go from our shoulders. Bring the head down towards the chest, heel the back of the neck. Bring the chin up. Feel the front of the neck, particularly and underneath the jaw. Push the jaw to the ceiling. Bring the chin back to neutral, ear to shoulder. Back to neutral, ear to other shoulder. Back to neutral, turn chin to shoulder. Back to neutral, turn chin. Back to neutral, and make your way to your back. So come on down to your backs. Start to soften in, land on the ground, and make a choice about where you would like to be for your resting position. So maybe you want to have your feet on a chair, cushion underneath your knees, maybe you're looking for your blanket. Find these comfort items in the way that your body can be most comfortable. So start to connect with the idea of letting all of the tension go from around the hips, all of the tension go from around the shoulders. So start to do that internal check-in. Do your shoulders need to move and wiggle? Do your hips need to take a wiggle? Does your neck need to move and soften? Take your own internal check-in. Take a few moments, a few movements to wiggle out. Feel the spine. Feel the muscles around the shoulders. Feel the muscles around the hips. Feel the feet. Stretch the toes, wiggle the toes. Feel the legs. And as you get to know your body and where you particularly hold a lot of tension, so some people have it in shoulders, some people hold it around injuries, maybe there's tension in your low back, maybe it's your hips, maybe a lot of people have tension in their feet too. So everybody has their own place, their own pattern. So as you get to know that pattern and you feel that gripping, It can be helpful to turn the muscles on as you're beginning to rest. So really turn them on tight. Take a deep inhale. It's as if you're telling your brain what the sensation of gripping feels like. So take a deep inhale as you're holding tight, and exhale. Tell your brain to let it go. And let go of the idea that maybe it's not going to let it go. Like, that's not right or wrong. You're just giving your brain hints, information. Like, hey, this hip seems to be tight, seems to always be gripping. Just keep a note of that, brain. Notice that that's there, so that maybe over time it can begin to release that gripping. It can begin to lose or let go of what is held here. And because we're a cognitive world, we often want to know exactly what that is. So our body sends us a message. My right hip has a clamping down, a tightness. When I do my splits, I can't do it on this side. When I do this, I can't do it with this side. When I try to balance, I can't do it with this side. And my brain's like, what? Why? I want these answers. I want these answers. Try to step away from the mind and the cognitive brain trying to interfere and be the star of the journey, and return to the hip. What does it feel like? What sensation do you have here? If I breathe in a certain way, can I change the physical sensation in this space? If I squeeze the muscle in a certain way, can I change how it feels? If I lengthen the muscle in a certain way, can I change how it feels? These are the experiences you're trying to have. You're trying to go into the muscle, go into the body, into the physical sensation, so that you can begin to let that gripping go. And then as you let the gripping go, you might notice that the mind stops gripping too. You might notice that the mind stops battling. It's almost like they're locked in a constant battle. And as one begins to let go, the other can settle down. So as you're lying on the ground, trying to release any tension in the physical body, begin to release tension around the breath. Perhaps even saying to yourself that all the work is done. All the tension can release. I can soften into the ground and take a break. So I wrote a little about the concept of negative and positive, good and bad. So feel free to just switch off, turn me out. Be done with practice, go into your resting pose, or if you'd like to listen, just give a soft attention to my voice. Try not to overly cognitively think about it. So from the day that we're born, we begin to shape our world into good and bad. We are taught to be a good child, a good citizen, a good person, a good student. Let's think about the idea of being a good student. We are taught that we must study hard and get all the answers right. However, in becoming too afraid to make any mistakes, we begin to lose the concept of being a student at all. From the good model of good versus bad, we begin to judge ourselves, judge our thoughts, judge our feelings, judge our actions. This thought is good. This feeling is bad. I invite you to begin to undo the practice of good versus bad. To undo the teachings of good versus bad. And rather than when a good thought comes, celebrating the good thought, or when a bad thought comes, punishing the good thought, but just allowing the thoughts to be present without fighting them. Let go of the gripping. So all of these practices that we do in yoga, the movement practices, give us an opportunity to practice this. What arises when we make a movement that's complicated? Do we begin to judge our physical body as right or wrong or good or bad? Do we begin to get frustrated that we cannot do a certain thing in the way that we feel is the right way? Or are we being given an opportunity by our body to listen to the messages, to observe the messages that are coming from our body, and perhaps take an entirely different route than what the teacher is teaching, and explore something else? Anxiety can be an expression of the cognitive mind being the only one getting a say when some of the other layers are being suppressed. So maybe we're layering and suppressing and judging our emotions, suppressing and judging our body, suppressing and judging our actions. I'm going to finish up with a reading from the Radiant Sutras. If I can find the one I chose. Abandon all these attitudes of wanting to prolong pleasure, and avoid suffering. Let the heart be itself and feel whatever is there. Freed from clinging and avoiding, the heart regains its poise and revels in creation. Plunging deep into its center, discover that the heart is moved by a pulse that is everywhere. So as you begin to really soften into your resting pose, you offer a practice of perhaps attaching the concept of negative and positive to your breath for a little while. Imagine one part of your breath is negative and one part is positive. And then begin to connect with the concept of both being present. One cannot work without the other. Both are present. Negative, positive, negative, positive. Maybe beginning to connect one side of your body as dark and one side as light. See the sever that you have created within your body. So see maybe like a deep chasm, maybe like an earthquake chasm or something that's being built by a river over time. But this split between the one side and the other. Split. Maybe there's a deep fiery pit of lava in between, and there's a split. And imagine with each breath, with each releasing of the tension, releasing of the gripping, releasing of the holding on to the judgments, you can imagine this chasm slowly closing, and the light and the dark slowly blending and becoming whole. Mixing, blending, becoming whole. Begin to see these two sides, light and dark, becoming so blended that you can no longer really tell which is which. It's all just a swirl, of living, moving energy. If you have more time to take in your resting clothes, please take as much time as you can. Listen to your body. Take the rest that it needs. If you have 60 minutes and you need to be done at 60 minutes today, you're right on that mark. So begin to bring yourself back to present moment, back to this space and time. Bring some movement to your body and make your way over to a fetal position, whatever side is calling to you. Take a moment to connect with that pulse within, your own vibration. And that unstruck chord, that pulse that is your own, is also similar to the pulse of the universe, similar to the sparkles of the stars, similar to the pulse of plants as they grow, similar to the pulse in the hearts of others. It is the thing that draws us to that sense of yearning for connection. Throughout time and history, we have yearned to understand and connect with something greater than ourselves, be it the understanding of the universe or the presence of whatever spiritual belief we have. It's that pulse within that draws us to think and try to connect with the pulse without us, outside of us. Slowly bring yourself to a seated position. Bring your hands at prayer at heart space and connect with this pose. Connect with bringing your left, your right sides to meet in front of your heart. Perhaps bringing your dark and your light into your heart center, ready to be accepted as whole and complete, precisely as you are. May we all feel a little more whole, a little less bad and good, a little more just us. Thanks for joining us.